Hey couples, well, you've made it to week number 3 in our Survival Guide for Parenting series. And Tracy, today we're talking about almost the other side of the coin from the last topic. Last time we talked about discipline. Some parents have a hard time giving discipline out. Other parents would have a harder time with today's topic.
Yeah, maybe you were raised in a home where you didn't hear a lot of affirming words or compliments. And so maybe that's hard for you then to do in relationships or even with your own kids. So we've got some practical tools for you today that we all need to be good at affirming our kids.
It's the last week in the Survival Guide for Parenting, and we're talking about principle number 3. Here it is. Affirm your kids. We're going to start with this. God the Father in the Bible spoke publicly about the Son, Jesus, 2 times in the Gospel of Matthew. And here's the insight. Both times it was to affirm him. Let's take a look. Matthew 3, verse 17, at Jesus' baptism, it says that a voice from heaven said, "This is my dearly loved Son who brings me great joy." And then later on in Matthew chapter 17, verse 5, during the transfiguration, a voice from the cloud said, "This is my dearly loved Son who brings me great joy. Listen to him." Now, parents, maybe you've never thought of these 2 passages as parenting passages before because there's so much more theology that we can mine from these verses. But today we just want you to see this simple idea that in both of these cases, God the Father is affirming his Son in public. And here's the point. If the perfect Son of God received words of affirmation from his Father, how much more do our imperfect kids need affirmation from their parents?
Yeah, I love the insight of thinking about the role of God the Father affirming Jesus, making sure that those in attendance of the baptism for the transfiguration to say, hey, this is my Son. This is Jesus. He brings me great joy and he has great value, and kind of speaking to who Jesus was and what his role was. And so when we think about that as parents, if God the Father saw that to be important, then how much more is it for us as parents to give value to our kids by praising them for the unique qualities that God has given them, and to celebrate them and to let our kids know you bring me joy, even though there's plenty of days that they bring frustration. One of my favorite proverbs is Proverbs 16:24 that says, "Kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy for the body." You know, parents, a lot of times we can kind of get stuck in the role of just disciplining, being frustrated with our kids, yelling at them, griping at them, telling them all the things they're doing wrong. And we forget to praise them, to affirm them, to let our words be like honey, soothing to the soul and good for them to hear that. And we have to remember as parents, there has to be a balance. There has to be discipline, like we talked about in the last lesson, for sure. But there also has to be then a time of praising and affirming so that our kids trust us, that they see that our heart is for them and not against them.
The truth is that every kid, even the most challenging ones, need and deserve affirmation. Now, Tracy, let's unpack this for a minute, because some parents might struggle with the idea of affirming a child who has been a real challenge for them. Does everyone really deserve affirmation, or are we being too soft here?
No, I mean, I think, again, even if we think about it in our own lives, how do we respond to the boss or to a teacher as we were growing up? If someone's just harsh with us, if they're unforgiving, if they're mean, is that motivating for us? Does that make us, respond kindly? Does that make us want to change behavior? Or does it just make us feel worse and worse about ourselves? And we have to recognize that our kids are kids. They're still growing and maturing and developing. And so if they just feel like we're constantly nagging the negative things that exhaust us in our kids' personality, then we're not creating that loving, trusting connection where they see like, no, I really do love you. And I love you enough that I have to discipline you, but I love you enough also to just say, God created you this way. And even though that personality trait might drive me a little bit crazy, it's still God created you uniquely and beautifully just the way you are.
But we get it. Some of you parents might say, all right, help me out. How do I do this? Whether it's the kids that are challenging or even just your kids that are, you love them, but maybe it's not a part of your gift set to speak praise or affirmation to your children, we want to make sure to end this lesson and this whole series on a super practical note. So Tracy, let's start with the 3 B's of affirmation.
The first one is be intentional. This is the same thing that we saw in the discipline lesson, that you need to be strategic and intentional with looking for ways to praise your kids, especially if it doesn't come naturally to you. You're not a words of affirmation kind of person. You're going to have to work hard and make this part of your parenting strategy to say, I'm going to be intentional by affirming my kids every day. The second one is be authentic. And especially as your kids get a little bit older, they're going to pick up on if you're just kind of given rote responses to things or you say the same thing every time. Like, be authentic, be real, even if it has to be that you admit sometimes to your kids, like, this is hard for me, but boy, I just want to tell you today that I love you, that I am proud of you, whatever that is. Be authentic and mean it when you say it. And the last one is be unique. You know, each of your kids deserves to be affirmed for those special traits that only they have. So when you say, I'm proud of you, go on and say, I'm proud of your studying habits. I'm proud of your outgoing personality. I'm proud of your loyalty or your obedience or your kindness. Be unique with each of your kids so they feel like those words of affirmation they get from you are specifically and only for them.
So those are the 3 B's. And now let's take a second to talk about the 3 T's of affirmation. And these are adapted from the 5 love languages. If you've ever heard of those in the context of marriage, these are the 3 T's of affirmation from parent to child.
So the first T is talk. So this is just what we just were kind of talking about with the 3 B's. Using your words to be authentic, to be unique about it, to use your words to praise your kids. The second one is time. Maybe you haven't thought about this in relationship with your kids, but boy, do they want to spend time with you doing something that they enjoy. So it's not just sitting down and watching TV after dinner. It would maybe do an art project with your kid that might be artsy, cooking with one of your kids who has an interest in that, shooting baskets or doing soccer drills, whatever those things are that your kids enjoy, that you take the time, you give your time to spend with your kids doing something where there's real connection that's enjoyable for your child. And the third one is touch. It's so important, parents, for you to give loving hugs of encouragement, to put your arm around your child after maybe a tough game or after a hard test and just give them encouragement. They need to feel affirming touch and affection from you.
So parents, those are some practical tips on the third and final parenting principle. Affirm your kids. Now use the resources down below to talk about this final principle and find more helpful topics for marriage and parenting and so much more at pursuegod.org/family.